a bastard, I mean, listen what I say. Then it is enough, then it is better. And if you're a bastard, no fucking scapegoat. Anytime bastard, then that's no say. But they will not think when they want me to think.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of Into the Necrosphere. I am joined today by my good friend Reichert to talk about the latest HBO Max documentary entitled Woodstock 99, Peace, Love and Rage. We were both very fascinated by this event, and I generally have been for many years now. I find myself going down all sorts of rabbit holes and watching all sorts of internet documentaries about it. So when a well-produced one made it to TV, Lo and I got to talking and figured it'd be a fun idea for us to really kind of give our reactions to the documentary on a podcast episode. We spoke about the event generally, and as you can imagine, we had some very strong opinions about some of what was said. So that's going to be coming your way in a few short minutes. Because this is a special episode, no reviews, no news or anything like that. This is just going to be an hour and a half of straight shit talking. I am back, however, next week Tuesday with a guest who I will not announce as of yet. I know that I was due to speak to Jay of Overthrow. That recording got moved to next week, so it's still happening. But I've got two in the offing that I'm particularly excited about. So I'm also a superstitious fool, and that's why I'm not going to do anything to jinx it. But I do want to give you the usual housekeeping reminders. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the show. Follow the show on social media and head over to the Teespring store to deck yourself out in some stylish but absolutely grim and badass Into the Necrosphere gear. And if you have not done so already, then you can help the show by spreading the word. And if you head over to Bandcamp and buy anything that you hear on the show, then let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you, because that is the easiest way for me to go about getting guests. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this episode. This is Woodstock, Peace, Love, and What the Fuck. I've got notes as well. I have been looking forward to this an awful lot because I've always been massively intrigued by the Woodstock 99 event. I mean, I think in part because it's kind of the one major cultural, milestone, not one major, but, one of the most major cultural milestones or cultural flashpoints, I should say, that happened in my lifetime. I remember watching the event, and fun fact on the side, this was the event where I forgave Metallica for Load and Reload. And I was so impressed by the performance. I was like, okay, I'll start listening to them again. And then some kind of monster came about and I was like, fuck this. You're dead to me once more. But I didn't realize at the time, because obviously, it's not like the internet was around, but we didn't have it at my house. So it wasn't like I was spending all day on the internet to kind of see all the goss and stuff like that. I remember seeing on the Monday morning the news of the riots and things like that, but it was sort of a passing news broadcast, and I was like, oh, who gives a fuck, and sort of went on with my day. I never realized that it was quite the catastrophe that it was until a couple of years later I started reading about it, and you see people mentioning it in interviews and things like that. Did you watch it at the time that it was on? I mean, you were heavily into some of the music that was showcased there. Was it something you were into? Did you watch it when it was on? And were you aware of kind of some of the goings on, I guess, while the event was taking place?
No, not at all. So I the first time I ever saw anything about Woodstock 99, I was still at my sneaker store in Bloem, and someone showed me or brought a videotape of Korn. And when they went on stage at 9:15 on Saturday or something like that, and all I could see was just what I could only describe as an ocean of human beings, and I just heard that and I was like, fucking up, are you ready? And that fucking crowd that started like jumping like an ocean. And to this day, if I show anybody ever anything about a live event, whenever they tell me about the best live events they've ever, I show them that. That was pretty much the only thing I knew about Woodstock '99 as Korn was there, because I was a little bit late to the game in terms of the new metal bands, because I only got into Limp Bizkit when they released Significant Other, and that was like bang on 99. So
Yeah, it was.
you know, I was still very much into rap and hip hop up until that point.
Yeah. As you'll, I think, recall from our many conversations at Urban Gear, I mean, at that time, my taste in music was a lot more closed-minded than it is now. You know, I was kind of, it was death and black metal, and then there was a couple of things on the periphery. So you know, I liked a couple of Limp Bizkit songs. I liked about 2-3 Korn songs. You know, but at the same time, I was still excited about the event because, you know, Metallica was playing, and it was just there was kind of something about the build up ahead of the event that you know, that was cool, and I remember making a point of watching it. The Korn set, I totally agree with you. I mean, just the response of that crowd when that band kicks in, love them or hate them. One thing that nobody can take away from Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst, for that matter, is that both of those guys know how to command a crowd, you know, like very, very few before or after them. You know, and they obviously, you know, this kind of plays into what we'll talk about in a little bit about, you know, them, particularly Limp Bizkit, getting blamed for what happened at the event. But I mean, the charisma and the way that they engage that audience, you watch that on video to this day, and it's you can literally feel the energy coming off the screen. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. So same thing with Fred Durst there, Jonathan Davis. The only other live clip like that ever that I've seen was Pantera Domination at Monsters of Rock in Russia. That like fucking blew my face off. Like how do you do that? You know, like and that's one of the some of the live clips that I've ever looked at. Domination, Pantera, and then the two clips from Woodstock '99.
Yeah. So the documentary is called Peace, Love, and Rage. It was put out on HBO Max, directed, or I think produced, by Bill Simmons, who also did an 8-episode series on a podcast about Woodstock '99. And I think there's two kind of conversations that we'll most likely be having in tandem here. One is about the actual documentary. And I know we've kind of purposefully not told each other our thoughts on it, although I suspect it's going to be quite similar. And then I think the other is about the actual event. But I think let's start with the talking points about the documentary. So obviously, you know, I think let's get the first one on the table from me, and I'm curious to see if you will agree with this or not. But I think as the documentary begins, it is so patently obvious that the producers, directors, writers have a very, very set agenda and are going to do everything that they possibly can to weave a narrative around what they, you know, the messaging that they want to get across in the documentary. I mean, and it's interesting, the response I've seen to this online. You know, some people think it's great. Quite a lot of people feel that it's very preachy, and they feel it's you know, the messaging is very confused, quite hypocritical on some spots. And then the other piece around it is, and this to me feels like sort of a broader thing I see emerging in kind of, you know, fringe media or alternative media, or actually not even alternative media, but pseudo alternative media, shit that's going out on the mainstream that pretends to be very edgy, like Vice. I mean, they're just launching a series now called Dark Side of the 90s. There seems to be this infatuation with revising the 90s as though it was some sort of 20th century dark ages, and you know, we should never return to that terrible time in life again. I don't know whether you are getting that sense from a lot of the shit that's coming out, certainly from this documentary.
Yeah, so there's definitely an agenda. Like as soon as it starts, even the fucking trailer. I mean, you can see that like it aims, and I know that mostly when one talks on any media these days, you've got to be careful what you say.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fit that same narrative, but when you start off with pointing that the evil of this particular day is, quote, white men in baseball caps.
Well, it's white rage.
Yeah,
It's
like what the fuck? Like, why? Yeah. I was like, the first thing I thought is like, yes, there's lots of white people, but that's the majority of the United States. I would imagine that it would be majoritarily white because they are the overwhelming majority. It's like holding a show in Africa and saying, oh my goodness, there's lots of black people there. Well, yeah, because they're the fucking majority. It was just kind of weird. Like why would you start with that? I tell you, the first thing that I thought was I was under this illusion that Woodstock '69 was this hippie festival that was beautiful and fantastic, everything. And they did a pretty good job in this documentary to show that was also an utter fuck up. So if the stories we tell about a certain event carries a certain story, then what's going to happen is that will be perpetuated through time as Woodstock '69 was this wonderful, flowery, beautiful thing, and Woodstock '99 is white anger, rock, kill, destroy, destruction, etc. I mean, there was destruction, let's be honest, but
yeah.
That was my first thought anyway.
Yeah, and I will definitely put the caveat, right at the very start of this. I'm, as some would no doubt have picked up from 90 plus episodes of this podcast now, I'm relatively conservative. So when it comes to rioting and bullshit like that, I'm not a fan of it, and likewise drugs and all the other crap that went on at Woodstock '99. So when I'm talking about all of this, I'm not an apologist for anything that happened there. I think a lot of it is fucked up. I think the narrative around what's to blame for it, I think, is completely skewed, and it's weird to me to kind of see the media going back to a kind of a satanic panic from the 80s, but this time they've replaced Satan with white rage and rock music. Kind of weirdly enough, rock music and the devil went hand in hand 20 years or 30 years ago. Now it's rock music and the white man. But yeah, I think anyone who listening to this needs to know that personally, in an ideal world, I would have sent the bombers in to calm things down over there. But I do think that the way the story has been told, there are just so many things that they get wrong. One thing they do get right, though, I totally agree with you. They actually do lift the lid and the veil off the. I think the very rose-tinted memories of Woodstock '69. Amidst, as I went down the rabbit hole on this, one of the things I read was that at Woodstock '69, apparently there was an incident where a power cable broke loose and fell into a pond of water or puddle of water or something like that. And as many as 10,000 people could have been killed as a result of that. Had someone not intervened or at least seen what was happening and done something about it. And you had the same problems there or many of the same problems there that you had at Woodstock '99: riots, sexual assault. I mean, everyone was fucking high off their face. The place was completely disorganized, mismanaged. So I'm glad that at least they were honest about that, and they didn't turn around and say, oh, well, because Jimi Hendrix was here, everything was wonderful. But then when 30 years later, when Fred Durst took to the stage, all hell broke loose.
Yeah. And to be honest, if you're going to use Woodstock '99 as a show of how awful something can be, you can probably go to an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester where someone just whips out a gun and shoots the whole fucking audience. You can blame that on really shit pop music, but really, that's not it, is it?
I mean, again, I think it's such a false comparison. I mean, I think around about the same time there was that very infamous riot in in South Africa at the soccer stadium in Soweto. The place, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Soweto or if this happened in elsewhere in South Africa, but I know one side of the stadium collapsed, and I mean that was a riot, and I remember the inquests about that. I mean, are we going to blame football now? Not football, actually soccer, because I'm not. No, it's not real football. But anyway, and there's, you can also then look at the flip side of it. How many countless festivals take place every single year with way more aggressive and violent music? Crowds maybe not quite the size, but very sizable. Wacken gets a good 100,000 to 120,000 people. Goes off for that incident. There's there's no riots, there's no violence, there's no talk of sexual assault. I'm sure there's shenanigans, but there's shenanigans everywhere. And again, I want to touch on that in a second too, because there's a couple of real fucking howlers, especially at the end of the documentary, that I'll touch on. But yeah, very much as we said, there's like from the beginning, you can just tell, they trying their best to find a way to somehow connect this to January the 6th. And all the people there, weirdly enough, echoed on a lot of tweets that I saw about it as well. They all ended up being Trump voters. that's the gist of what they're trying to say to you.
Yeah, look, it's a terrible way to try and write a story. What does it have to do with politics?
Yeah,
and here was my first thought. Okay, the 90s. All right, so because they take 90, is it Woodstock 94? They take Woodstock 94 as an example of how wonderful Woodstock 94 was, and it was beautiful, and it was flowers, and I think Alanis Morissette was there or something. It was like wonderful and flowery and all that shit. But actually, the biggest tool on the whole fucking thing was probably Moby. But he said one thing that was right. Okay, this is one thing I agreed, like fucking spot on. It should have just never been called Woodstock, having those types of bands there. You should have called it I don't know what he called it, like angry.
It was like rock at the airbase or some airbase rock or something.
Rock like festival at the airbase. Yes, you should have called it angry rock at the airbase. You shouldn't have called it Woodstock, because Woodstock stands for peace and love. And when you have a band called Rage Against the Machine at a place, it's gonna get people to go off but the thing I wanted to point out is the 90s was a particularly violent time across the world, but particularly violent time in America. If you look at every movie that you could look, was this fucking proper violence, lots of gang violence, there was multiple violence. Also, America was very much entrenched in war in that time. So I think the temperature on the ground globally, but also in America, was quite tense towards the end of the 90s. And it's no surprise that sort of came through the public, but I don't think you can blame the bands.
Yeah. I was going to say one of the first things that they get wrong is they fail to capture the times correctly. And they fail so on a number of levels. So number one, they romanticize grunge as though it was this politically progressive movement where apparently Kurt Cobain wasn't just high off his face and wanting to be funny by wearing a dress. He was gender bending, quote unquote.
Yes.
And they also ignore the fact that grunge as a movement was incredibly narcissistic. Had a rampant drug use, multiple folks who died either of overdoses or of drug induced suicide. That they kind of wipe out. They ignore that completely. They ignore.
Sorry to interrupt. The other thing that they did is they made it out as if the movie Singles was a bad thing. I mean that was like utter sacrilege. I wanted to throw a stone through my computer and say, "What the fuck are you doing?" That is cinematic.
Side note: there's and I know this is a mostly black and death metal podcast. There's a Chris Cornell song on there called "Seasons" on the single soundtrack, which is absolutely stunning. That's always whenever I think of singles, I always think about that. But that's the thing. In many ways, in my now that I've kind of had time to think about it, I feel like the 90s was a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to the political correctness of the 1980s. Like if you look at movies in the 1980s as an example, there was some good stuff that came out. when one of the greatest movies ever, Predator, came out. But generally speaking, good always triumphed over evil. If you look at comedy as a genre, the main formula of a comedy in the 1980s was guy's an asshole, various things happen to him, he realizes he's wrong, and he's a sweet, lovely guy everyone loves at the end of it. And that you can list them off: Groundhog Day, Scrooge, they're all like that. And then the 90s comes around, and all of a sudden, this sweet, almost kind of sweet innocence of the of 1980s cinema gets replaced with Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. It's the age of the anti-hero. In sports, people are cheering the bad guys. The most popular, sport-related programming is pro wrestling, and it's popular because everyone wants to cheer for the bad guy. They're cheering for Stone Cold. They're cheering for Hollywood Hulk Hogan when he turns heel. You've got crazy stuff happening all over all over kind of popular culture. Women are not only becoming a lot more overtly sexual, but they're also being a lot more open about the fact that they are overtly sexual. You think back to Jasmine Sinclair doing like the world's biggest gangbang and being on Howard Stern, Jerry Springer, and not giving a fuck and being like, I'm doing this because I enjoy doing it.
Also, porn stars came to the forefront as I want to be with. If I'm a musician, I'm hanging out with a porn star. So the overt sexuality. I remember when I met you, and you said to me, "You watch porn." I was like, "Fuck, this person." Did he actually admit this out loud to another? And sorry, so I know I took you off your rail there, but
yeah.
But back then there was a fucking brand called Porn Star, and it was awesome to wear. So overt sexual, and the women got paid way fucking more than the men, and it was this big thing. Anyway, sorry, I took you off the rail.
But yeah, it was a hyper violent, hyper sexualized decade. There's no getting around it. And they, and the thing about it is, it's like, you may look back at it now and say, God, why did we do those things? And that's a bit silly, or that's a bit wrong, or that's a bit stupid. But at the same time, to look back at an event, scratch your head over why certain things are happening, but not look at it in the context of the time is just completely ridiculous.
But then also look at the rap genre at the time. Hyper violent, hyper.
Yeah. Well, I was just about to say, I mean, rap suddenly went from Young MC and a lot of the sort of golden age of hip hop artists, suddenly became NWA, Cypress Hill. Cypress Hill were putting out gnarly stuff, like Temples of Boom and things like that at the time. Grave Diggers came out. Personally, for me, the greatest rap of the first 5 years of the 90s. But I mean, everything became more violent. TV shows became more violent, more risque. It was the culture at the time. So to look at it, yeah, exactly. To look at it and to say, it's so shocking seeing all these women bare their breasts and Girls Gone Wild and all this sort of stuff. It's like I as an experiment, I had Paige watch it with me because I wanted somebody who didn't really grow up in the 90s, or at least was too young to remember most of the 90s, seeing it and giving me their kind of neutral view on it. And I mean, even she was saying, like, none of those people look like they're having a terrible time, or that they doing all of this sort of thing under duress. So that to me is ridiculous. I think then they kind of make it even worse when they talk about the advent of nu metal, and they say how they essentially talk about how insidious it was that metal and hip hop, combined. And they go on about how, I think one of the quotes is that, as soon as, this white rock or this white metal, took on these hip hop elements, they lost all the soul, all the R&B, all the nuance. And I was like, oh my fuck, are you guys out of your fucking minds?
But I was talking to my wife about this as well. I mean, and they talk about how wrong it's almost as if it was wrong to take a hip hop element into heavy music, but it sold fucking records because it was quite nice to blend the two. But on the other side, Puff Daddy fucking took Sting's music and put out one of the biggest fucking singles that was ever released on this planet. Because it works. What's that other? Jay-Z took fucking It's a Hard Knock Life from Annie and pumped it into a song because it fucking works. Pras took like Ghetto Superstar, which is Islands in the Stream, pumps it into his music because it fucking works. So if you then take the hip hop element and you put it into the rock element, it fucking works. And what you do is you cross, pollinate genres and you draw a bigger audience.
Well, that's the thing as well to me was, yes, okay, so perhaps it was more, it's more tailored or at least appealed to a white audience more than it did an African American or black audience. But I do feel, if I think back to the Judgment Night soundtrack as an example, I mean, there was, in my view, in my observation at the time, there was at least an ambition or an intention to unify, to kind of, break the barriers of it's, they're there, we're over here. It's kind of like, hardcore and thrash in the 1980s. I mean, that was obviously, both are predominantly white styles of music, but, when SOD, whose t-shirt I've got on right now, when they came out, they combined the two, and there were a lot of bands that did that, and it broke down a lot of those barriers, and the scene became more unified. And I do feel like, I think in many ways, nu metal just publicly acknowledged what a lot of folks on probably either side had been too almost ashamed for whatever social stigma comes with it to acknowledge. And that is that, hey, by the way, some of us like both really angry guitar-based music, and some of us like hip hop too. And we probably like it for exactly the same reason. It's because it's, it's testosterone fueled. It's an outlet for us. And actually, when you combine the two, again, for me personally, it some of it was great, some of it didn't work so well, but a lot of people got into it.
Yeah, and so if you look at what happened maybe 4 or 5 years prior, okay, so take the early 90s to the mid 90s, I think that is the golden age for music, full stop. And for all genres, all the genres that emerged during that time, and you can look at it in hip hop, I think that was its golden age. But look at what heavy metal produced during that time. Pantera was at their fucking best. So this is pure testosterone fueled, like shaved head, fucking here we go. But on the other side, you've got a Wu-Tang Clan and you've got a Cypress Hill. Now this was the first time that sort of very end of the 80s, but definitely that first period of the 90s. This is when white people got into hip hop. And they were not ashamed to do so, okay? And me, I was one of them. I was the biggest hip hop fan in the world. Fucking the big purple jeans, fucking draped clothing. I called myself a homeboy, walking around, I mean, I still wear this thing fucking says blood in, blood out, like, Mexican. Yeah. So you got white people that were proper into hip hop. Okay, but you've got another group that's proper into heavy metal. You've got another group that's proper into grunge. Is it a strange phenomena that I like those different elements, and you can see those elements married. I remember saying to friends of mine who were with me, I would love to hear some heavier version of rap. I would love to hear that. And then that Judgment Night soundtrack came out. I was like, what the fuck is this? Onyx and Biohazard, and it just worked so well.
Faith No More and Booyah Tribe.
Faith No More, Booyah Tribe, it just worked. It just married so well. The music genres of those times, they married really well. Yeah. And it was only going to be for a while, and you can tell it was only going to be for a while, and then eventually it was just going to split off again, and it did.
Yeah.
It was there from maybe 1999 till maybe 2002.
Yeah, I don't think that it, the way, or as divisive as they try and portray it in the documentary, I think it's incredibly disingenuous. And then they take it one step further with something that I thought was really ludicrous in the documentary, and they talk about DMX. Now, firstly, let's acknowledge the fact that they try and paint him as some sort of hip hop saint. And I think one of the talking heads, is quoted as saying this was supposed to be his moment. And it's like, well, it was his moment. Because if you actually go on YouTube and you watch the whole show, the people were fucking lapping it up. You know, if I would give my left nut to have 250,000 people chanting my lyrics back at me and losing their minds because of how much they like me. And everyone there, by the way, also seemed to really enjoy Wyclef, and they seemed to really enjoy a lot of the other, you know, non-metal stuff that was there. But why I pause on DMX is you know, you have the whole big debate about, you know, him doing his my ninja song, and the crowd is chanting the N-word back at him, but he's instigating it like anyone at any, you know, at any hip hop show or any metal show, any other music show at the time would do. You know, crowd sing along. He holds the mic to the crowd. Then you have that mustachioed fucking imbecile from New York Times standing there. Imagine how he must have felt. Imagine how how African Americans in the audience must have felt. Then you go, but as you're saying this, you're panning over the audience. I see plenty of African Americans. They seem to be having a pretty good time too.
Fuck.
So the thing is, there. Look. Again, I you know, would I want to, you know, would I say something like that, you know, openly? Absolutely not. Would I even want to sing along to that? Probably not. You know, probably not. Do I think that intent is something that's very important when it comes to that? Absolutely. And they're not yelling it at him because they want to subjugate him and, you know, insult the guy.
Let's be honest, okay? If we rewind 20 years ago and you and I were in fucking the United States in front of a DMX show and he was there, and we would have both chanted along all the. That'd be perfectly fucking awesome. Because what is the truest thing, okay, is there's a golden line to what is it? Taking offense is akin to giving offense, okay? So if someone gives you a license and sings along with them, okay, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. Not a single one of the 250,000 people were being malicious when they sang along with DMX.
Yeah.
So it's licensed. The fact that they can call that N-word to each other means it's licensed. It's okay. Okay, you can't say it, you can, and therefore no one fucking bats an eyelid about that word. So it's the strangest word in the world for me, by the way, because some group is allowed to use it, and they use it everywhere on every television station. They use it in stand-up comedy. It's okay because it's licensed. And then another group is not licensed to use it, and therefore you're offended and you'll go to jail. But had we been in that show, there was license for everybody, 250,000 people, 250,000 people who could use it because we're all singing it together. Cool, no problem.
Yeah. And I think the key thing there is intent. And I think it's so ludicrous the way they then try and paint that. And at one point, I think the guy asks, you know, I wonder what their views would be if you speak to them about it now. It's like, again, I think they would have said, I'm having a pretty great time. And, you know, I really like DMX's music, and he's you know, imbibing me to sing along to a song that I really like. So I'm going to do that.
One thing I also thought was part of their agenda is, let's wait for DMX to die before we make it. Because just now someone actually asked him that fucking question, because he would say, dude, it was fun.
Yeah.
But second, you see all the people that they interviewed, they could have interviewed a guy from Metallica. They could have interviewed Fred Durst. They could have interviewed everybody, and they would have said, dude, it was a fucking awesome show. You know, it turned out pretty shit, okay? But blame fucking Red Hot Chili Peppers for that shit. It wasn't on a Saturday or the Friday. It was on fucking Sunday, you know? But anyway, it just so happens that the only fucking person who was there was that they bothered to interview was fucking Moby. I mean,
well, Moby and moron Dave Mustaine, who we'll talk about in a second as well.
Dave and Jonathan Davis. Which is I made some notes about.
Well, so here's the interesting thing. I went back and I watched a lot of the interviews recorded on the day. And there's a couple of things that I thought was that stood out to me. So firstly, they interviewed Jason Newsted and James Hetfield of Metallica, and Jason makes the comment that it feels more organized than 94. So I kind of thought to myself, I thought back to some of the scenes from 94. And I mean, I remember bands playing and having mud thrown at them. And I mean, the whole place looked like a complete mess. I can't recall much by way of riots or anything like that. But, you know, I'm pretty confident there would have been a fair bit of malarkey going on behind the scenes there. But I think what's very patently obvious from the interviews that you see is no one realized what was going on in the audience. Those folks were flown in, or they were bussed in, or whatever the case may be. But either way, the way that they would have entered into that venue would have kind of screened them from much of what was going on outside. And then you get on stage, and once you get us on stage, you are probably blown away and mesmerized by the number of people that you're seeing in front of you. And when those people are kind of giving you the sort of energy that audience is giving you, like Jonathan Davis said when he was finished, he's quoted as saying his soul left his body. He said it was the greatest show that he's ever played and ever will play.
Yeah, I mean, you saw him. He was like finished, done. That was it. Everything that has ever been inside of that man left him for that show. And also, of course, they did not say they tried to somehow narrow it in on Limp Bizkit for some reason. I don't know why, but because the shit really kicked off on the last day,
on the Sunday. Yeah, I agree.
And let's be honest, they were being friendly towards Rage Against the Machine, because Rage Against the Machine is just not all baseball wearing fucking white guys, right? But the Fred Durst, I don't know if you've actually read what he actually said to the crowd the whole time. You probably watched it.
I watched the whole set,
and he was quite clear. Look, fucking stop causing cuck, okay? They just use him saying it's time to get rid of that negativity. They focus on this word negativity. He goes fucking off, but he says get rid of it. And now that we've got rid of it, it's now time to be a little bit more positive. I would do that in a fucking crowd, And
I think having watched the whole show, and some of the songs I liked, some it was a bit of an endurance test, but having watched the whole show, I don't personally think that he really does anything there that was not done by a fucking 1,000 other bands in the late 90s. I mean, I remember when Imperial Empire did their first show. First thing that happened is I jumped on stage after the intro playing, and I was like, "We're Imperial Empire, let's fuck this place up." And it's and I'd stolen that from a Hatebreed show. And I was, I was 19 or 20 years old at the time, so I was easily influenced by bullshit. But that's the way everyone spoke.
Yeah, as did I. Fucking and what you do is you take a crowd, in most if you're fucking Stamping Ground, or if you're Hatebreed, or if you're Devil Driver or whatever, you take your crowd and you separate them like a fucking wall of war. Okay, they face each other, and you fucking start chugging them as they go, and everybody fucking runs into each other, and they love it.
That was another thing that
I did it with all 7 of our audience as well,
Well, that was another thing that they comment on. Oh, and the woman from Spin, as well as the New York Times nerd, and that other fucking gray geek that they had in there. They all kind of said the same thing. When you're moshing, it's like you're losing control of your body. It's like I listened to it, and I was like, for real. So no one who realizes you're going to make your way to the front of 250,000 people, and you don't think to yourself, this is going to get pretty intense. I mean, we were right at the front at Slayer for I mean, I think the Astoria could take 5,000 people.
Not even. No.
I felt that for a couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, I remember holding onto the rail, and then the force came from the back, and the sort of crowd started moving sideways, and I held on with everything I had. I was fucking weak, dude. I could not hold on to fucking, so I just started moving to the side like this. I'm like, fuck. So yeah, it's, I mean, you don't stop someone. You're just part of that wave. And for most part, I've been to fuckloads of heavy metal shows. For most part, people pick you up if they see you go down.
Yeah.
So no one is generally there to hurt each other. But yes, people do get hurt. But I don't think they get hurt on purpose. Unless unless they say something bad about your favorite band,
Well, unless they're looking to get hurt. Well, again, I think you spot on Rage Against the Machine. I mean, they seem to get a free pass. So on two levels. Number one, they set the American flag on fire on stage. So that's the first incident that, if you want to get literal about it, that's the first piece of arson that gets committed at the festival. And they don't connect that whatsoever to burning shit later on in the weekend. The other thing is, again, they act as though Rage Against the Machine, being the progressive stalwarts that they are, have never once been involved in anything like this elsewhere. You need only look on the internet to see Big Day out in Australia. 2 people got killed right in front of the stage. And the guys from Rage Against the Machine rightly said we didn't realize it was happening. I think it was at the Leeds Festival. They had to stop the show, push the people back because people were getting crushed at the front. There's been riots and there's been people injured at Rage Against the Machine shows multiple times. So for Tom Morello with his little fucking pseudo PhD that he got from Harvard or whatever the fuck to sit there and pontificate, and I don't think he was actually even on this documentary, but I've seen him interviewed elsewhere about it, and openly saying it was Limp Bizkit's fault. Basically the whole weekend is Fred Durst is to blame for all of it. I just think is just pathetic, absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, I agree. It's the free pass was the it was clear for me, like, whoa, hang on a second, you can't free pass anybody here.
No.
Also they kind of stabbed a little bit at Red Hot Chili Peppers, but not really. But also they're from LA, they're cool.
They're from LA and they've played at a few Hillary benefits and things like that. So another thing I thought, just as a side note, was amusing. They bring up Monica Lewinsky. And then they talk about how women were disposable in the 1990s, which I don't agree with. But the one thing that they completely neglect to mention, because they say Bill Clinton railroaded them. It was actually not just Bill Clinton; it was very, very much his wife Hillary who was spearheading that. I mean, you read about what she did to Paula Yates and people like that. Again, doesn't get mentioned. But anyway, so moving on.
Just to pause on that Monica Lewinsky point, it was also during that sort of time in the documentary where Kid Rock walks on stage, and I will just say that having seen that show multiple times, that Kid Rock scene, etc. To this day, he looks like an absolute fucking boss when he walks onto that. He's like absolute,
in his pimp clothing. Yeah, and I think they said, how tone deaf can you be? It's like, again, mate, they all seem to really be liking it.
But the best bit about that is him talking about income inequality. The guy literally said, look, that it shows about the wild income inequality. Yeah. He walks on stage as a pimp. I mean, where the fuck did you draw that line? That,
it's again, I think the other thing that's a pervasive issue with a documentary from start to finish is very often when they do these documentaries, they try and find far too much meaning in what is drunk, drugged up idiots behaving like morons. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And there are thousands of festivals, clubs, bars, parties. I mean, the stuff I've seen at beach parties in the relatively conservative enclave of Hermanus, which you and I both know, would make anything I've seen at a metal show look like an absolute fucking, walk in the park. Would make it look like a trip to Bible school.
Yeah, and that fucking vegan hippie bloody Moby. So he goes to that show. He's like, oh my god, the air was so aggressive. And if you're telling me that this guy and his fucking music hasn't had the most drugged up people in the 90s fucking tripped their balls off to his music at rave festivals where multiple ODs would have happened, way more than the deaths you would have seen at this fucking spot, but no, it's, because I don't eat meat and I vote left, so therefore I'm off the hook, thank God skin is now clear.
There was a there was another comment made by the spin journalist, and her name escapes me now, which I also thought was just I thought was obscene. She says, so you have this this event where there's all this angry music all day, and people are dehydrated, and then someone thought it was a great idea to have DJs going on through the night. And whoever would have thought that people who want to listen to angry rock would want to bliss out? Her exact word was bliss out to Moby. It's like, again, seemed like the tent was packed to me. And by the way, at most festivals nowadays, there's electronic music in the after the bands have finished playing, and that goes on until 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah, and could you tell how much people were loving on Coachella? Like, oh my God, Coachella's so
Oh yeah,
awesome.
well, it becomes a fucking ad for Coachella at the end. The funny thing about it is, I read an article about sexual assault at Coachella, and apparently there was I can't remember the exact numbers, but there was a survey done, and something like 1 in 56 women surveyed who'd attended Coachella, I think in 2019, said that they had been harassed or groped or whatever the case may be. So again, spare me your pious fucking bullshit, because that was the other thing. Women are getting groped and this, that, and the other's happening. A subtle undercurrent. It's also basically Limp Bizkit's fault.
Yeah, because the Nuki.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw the tie-in of Cash, right? So Moby talks about, the reason why they had all these bands, it's all about the money, greed and capitalism. And let's go to Coachella and then show, Woodstock only made so much money, and look how much money Coachella makes. Like,
yeah. I think tickets to Coachella is something like $400. That's the other thing. They talk about how expensive it is to go to Woodstock, and the water is so expensive. And it's like, well, have you been to Coachella? So no, it's nuts. The next thing that they get way wrong, they briefly mention, or they hint at how much drugs were coming into the venue, and then they sort of just go past that again, because probably most of the people that they're friends with are a bunch of fucking speedheads and meth heads anyway. Interesting thing, I've been listening to a book on Audible, which I've spoken about quite a lot on the podcast, called Chaos, by a guy called Tom McNeil, and he talks about experiments that were done on rats and mice that lived in, or that they housed in very confined spaces, or very uncomfortable spaces. And when they introduced amphetamine into them, or into their system, they would immediately become hypersexual, cannibalistic, basically just murderous, fucking horrible things that would start attacking each other, ripping each other apart. And then what they found is, over time, even some of the males that hadn't received the amphetamines would become what they call probers, which essentially are these very violent, males that are subservient to like a dominant male in the pack. And so that got me thinking. In the 90s, I mean, I think arguably the favorite drug of choice, without a shadow of a doubt, was speed, or amphetamine. If that has that sort of effect on human beings in an environment where it is too hot, you're dehydrated, probably a little undernourished, there's alcohol thrown into the mix, you are wallowing in human excrement and filth, and there's every possible reason for you to be angry and pissed off and annoyed. How on earth would it not have happened? Would things not have turned out that way?
So, that's a great question, and speaks to how much fucking research you do on shit. But here's another thing. Have you ever read the book by Philip Zimbardo called The Lucifer Effect?
No.
So this is the guy that did the Stanford prison experiment. Okay, and he wrote The Lucifer Effect right after the sort of Iran, Afghanistan wars, because how American soldiers would eventually take people and torture them, etc. And he actually came and testified at one of the female soldiers' trials. But the thing that he talks about is how herds of people, when the first 1 or 2 or 3 do it, then it other people follow. Most humans move in herds, and so you have then got the main person, and then a lot of other people is okay, follow, and they do what the herd does. And so you could kind of see the first one would try and break the wall down, and then the next one, and then the herd sort of comes and does it like monkey see, monkey do type thing, and it's quite actually to see that, and then also watch these like looting and riots now here in South Africa a couple of weeks ago. They look the same, in terms of 1, 2, and then 3, and then a lot of people.
Well, look at what happened in the summer last year. You had people protest, or mostly peaceful protests, and then the mostly peaceful protests, very quickly, descended into complete and utter chaos and anarchy and craziness.
And the other thing is then what they did was, okay, how do we speak to the narrative of today? Okay, look at this. The police came. Okay, and so here's this guy who's burning pretzels, and the police comes, and he goes, "Sorry, I'll go home. Fine."
Yeah.
And then I go, you see, white privilege.
I saw that.
He's just going home. If this was a bunch of black people, actually, the statistics are quite clear, guys. If the fucking police show up and you go, sorry, I'll get on the ground, nothing happens. It's only when you go, fuck you, pig, then you're gonna get
that the nightstick gets taken out. Yeah, no, I did see that, and again, by that point, I was already so fucking pissed off with the documentary. I couldn't really think straight. But I mean, again, I think the drugs thing is completely ignored for the most part. There's no way that couldn't have played a role. The one thing they're hard on them. I don't think hard enough. I mean, I think frankly, I don't know if it did happen, but I think if they weren't, then they certainly should have sued the promoters for criminal negligence. Because I mean, in terms of the clusterfucks of all clusterfucks, the way that festival was put together and how combative, I think the guy's name is John Shear, was in those press conferences, when the press are legitimate, asking him legitimate questions, it was just insane. You think if they had 250,000 people there at $150 a pop, I mean, just off the gate they're making $27 million. Surely they would have had enough money to install a few more portaloos and make sure that the showers are not the fucking shower shacks that they were, and the things were just that there was something more by way of security than those fucking bozos in the yellow shirts that they had over there.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when someone says to him, "Listen, here's the problem." It's like, "Oh, well, you come and clean then. You come and help." Well, no, dude, you're the fucking promoter. You sort this out. He was very hostile. And kudos to him to get on the fucking interview, because it takes a lot of balls to be the guy that's caused it all, and then still
he's a pretty brazen cat, I would say, about a lot of things. Because one of the things that he mentioned, and we're heading into very controversial territory here now, but one thing that he's gotten a lot of heat for after the documentary was his comment around the fact that he says, he doesn't condone it, but the fact that women were running around naked, they were kind of gagging for it.
Yeah, but old. That's an old
50s mentality. Yeah,
50s mentality. You're asking for it because you look the way you do.
Yeah.
And kudos to most of the bands is when you hear about it, they say, "Hey, listen, leave them alone." Fuck, what's wrong with you? And I'll be honest. When a bunch of dudes are all in the same venue, are all pissed. And someone's going to come fly you. I've seen it in many shows. All the guys go and have a grow. Whether the chick is clothed or not, they have a feel, they have a squeeze. So the one thing that I would say is, when you are going to go to a show like that and you are a girl, you have to be prepared to deal with some fucking disgusting dudes.
Scumbags.
I'm not condoning what the dudes do. They should be buried under the fucking jail, right? But I'm just saying, be prepared for guys being like bit piggy.
Well, this to me is kind of like the debate that was had around Marilyn Manson, because a lot of Marilyn Manson's fans, when all this stuff came out about how abusive he was towards his girlfriends, there were a bunch of people that said, oh well, they should have known, that they were getting involved with the Prince of Darkness. They should have known what they were letting themselves in for, and that's a completely fucking facile comment to make. To think that it's okay to be probed with kitchen utensils just because the guy that you're dating is a bit edgy. Now, that all that being said, we both have daughters, and I have thought about this many times. I would hope that she would have learned enough from her father by the time that Meadow is of age to know, one, don't run around with your breasts out at a festival where there's a load of drunk men. Two, don't date people that look like Marilyn Manson. Look and behave like Marilyn Manson. There is that as well. You kind of go, okay, well, I really wish people's parents would intercede here a little bit and kind of teach them to be a bit more responsible. I completely agree with you. It's fucking idiotic, and they should have turned the fire hoses on them. But as a father of a daughter, I will for sure be teaching my daughter, unfortunately, this is life. People are trash. And you need to brace yourself accordingly. Now, again, that being said, the implication is made on the documentary that it's an anomaly. It doesn't occur anywhere other than at Woodstock '99. And then you go, okay, well, what about all the viral videos of the guys dropping pills in girls' drinks in Ibiza, or again Coachella, 1 in 56 women being sexually harassed or groped. Again, it just goes back to what we said before about the very set narrative at the beginning of the documentary that they then try and fucking bludgeon into you, with every single frame.
Yeah, and and let's be honest, it's not like American culture excludes nudity and at any other like event. So if you look at Mardi Gras, it's everybody's out at Mardi Gras. You get these things thrown around you. The more kick you lose, and everybody's got their boobs out, etc. I'm pretty sure if we really dig in, like every chick that's ever flashed her boobs at Mardi Gras has had some dude grabbing, because everybody's pissed, and all your inhibitions and all the social sort of blockades that have been put in by society. This is not cool, dude. They vanish when a guy gets pissed, and or a girl gets pissed. Let's be honest, not by any stretch of the imagination the same amount, but I'm sure there's some girl that's grabbed some guy's dick as well. Because your inhibitions disappear when everybody's in a group and everybody's pissed, and so. But that happens at a house party. That happens. That happens across countries, across racial lines, across age groups. It happens. I mean, that is just we go to some fucking dark, backward nature of ourselves where we're primates, and if you look at primates, they don't fucking ask for permission, and get buy-in, whatever. They touch and grab and get.
Well, again, I still think I really do think my theory of the amphetamines holds water. It does. It was a very popular drug at the time. Brings out certain types of behavior, and that sort of confined locale in those circumstances, it's not surprising that people would behave that way. I mean, you think about the new metal scene; they were all fucking addicted to meth, and they openly admit it. Before he found Jesus, Head was a meth addict. Jonathan Davis was heavily into meth. So one thing as well, they talk about the Limp Bizkit show and how Fred should have slowed it down and stopped it. So it was Page who asked, "What is he supposed to do? Stop playing the show?" If he had said, "Oh, you guys are getting a little out of hand. I'm out of here. Goodbye." Can you imagine what would have happened then? I mean,
because I'm drunk and you're telling me what to do. Fuck you. Maybe it's because all the bands along the way have been trying to tell people what to do, and these guys are going, "Fuck you, man. I'm here to have a good time. Who the fuck are you?" I spent $180 a ticket and $4 a bottle of water. Fuck you, dude.
But that was another thing they failed to contextualize, is around the cost of everything. I mean, is that yeah, $4 for a bottle of water is expensive, but was that completely out of whack with what they were charging elsewhere?
Probably not.
At other festivals? I wouldn't imagine so. I've not been to all that many festivals. I've been to, I was dragged to Bestival as part of a bachelor do, and I mean, it was fucking expensive. It's like $5 so £5 a bottle for a bottle of Diet Coke.
Yeah.
So,
And the other thing that I wanted to say is just after Woodstock '99, then came the Ozfest phenomena, right? And much more aggressive, much heavier bands, much angrier music, and no incidents. But wait till the producers start getting hold of the heavy metal culture. Is we're going to be dragged back into the '80s where everything
for sure. Well, so Ozfest had actually been going on from 1996. So the first, when it was still a rather than a tour, it was a festival. The first one was held on the 25th of October 1996. And they then ran until 1999 as like 2-day festivals. And again, I mean, I'm sure there was shenanigans there, but there was certainly nothing on the scale of Woodstock. And to your point, way heavier bands, way more aggressive. And you had some seriously aggressive tour packages that happened after that as well. I mean, just looking at new metal, there was the Family Values tour that I think happened after Woodstock '99. You had, I think this was a little bit later, but you had the Extreme Steel tour. There was Pantera, Slayer, Morbid Angel, a couple of bands. That was a big tour, and it was, I mean, that is a fucking heavy ass tour as well. But yeah, one thing that they brought up in the documentary that's also just completely off the timeline is they throw Napster in there for some fucking random reason. The whole Napster lawsuit thing happened in 2000. It didn't happen in 1999. And then they use that as an opportunity for withered up old Dave Mustaine to sit there and throw digs at Metallica, like, don't you have enough money? It's like, but the whole music industry complains about how they're not getting enough money out of streaming. Metallica were trying to stop that, and now you want to moan about that as well.
Yeah, but he's just the most bitter cat in the world, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, that was one thing that struck me as well, is I thought that Moby and Dave were both they just came across as incredibly embittered old men.
Yeah, I thought so too. And Jonathan Davis came across as a big wuss.
Yeah, well, he threw Fred under the bus quite a bit on other interviews I've seen. He blames him for it, and he says, he wishes he could punch him in the face. And it's like, well, neither of you guys are particularly tough, so if that did happen, that didn't even leave much of a mark. The real question is, had Biohazard and Slayer played at that show, would the riots have been quelled by now, or would there be guys like, I've just celebrated my 40th birthday, but I'm still fucking the place up?
Well, let's be honest. If Evan Seinfeld from back in the day, not today, but if Evan Seinfeld from back in the day said, "Hey, can you stop that shit?" I think everybody would have listened.
Yeah. I mean, there were, or very infamously, there were those riots at a Slayer show in 1992. I think that they were happening around the same time as the LA riots. Initially, I think the LA mayor blamed Slayer for the riots. They were getting chairs thrown around at them and all sorts of stuff. Slayer shows in the old days were notoriously violent, which is why if you listen to Decade of Aggression, as early as the second song, you hear Tom talking about, big people, help each other out, blah, 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 don't let people get hurt on the ground and things like that. That's because people were legit getting hurt at shows. Sepultura, I remember reading about the first show they ever came to play in London. They played at the London the Underworld. I think they were going to open for Sodom, and word got round that they were the opening band. I don't think it had been publicized, and the lines were down the block. I've spoken to one or two people who were at that show, and they were like, you literally feared for your life in there. It was so fucking intense.
Yeah, the line went down to Kentish Town Station.
Yeah,
I mean that's long.
Yeah, no, very much so. If I wanted to be truly conspiratorial, I would kind of go, they're showing all this stuff because they want to scare people out of going to shows ever again, and out of live music, because there's definitely, like I said, there's this revisionist thing about the 90s. The 90s was the worst thing ever. It's like, now it's like, these shows of all the disasters. It reminds me a little bit of the posters they put up on the Truman Show to scare him off flying or scare him off travel. Like an airlines poster where the plane's being hit by lightning. It could happen to you. It's kind of like that now.
Yeah. There's a lot of anti that time, but I think I think it was a golden age for fucking movies. I think it was a golden age for music. I think it was fucking golden age for many a thing. So I absolutely love it.
I said to Paige straight after the documentary had done, I said, my conclusions, those people are all a bunch of cunts. The 90s was the best time to be alive. I fucking loved every second of it. So.
Yeah, me too. And just to emphasize the fact that it was an aggressive time, it was the advent of the UFC during that time.
Yeah.
And that is what people wanted to see. And look at the intro song to the UFC was like a fucking new metal vibe band thing. If you look at the first intros of the UFC, it was always, fucking macho guys, fucking tattooed. Here we go. It was just that time. And that time is, well and truly gone. And I'm not sure if we'll ever get another time like that again.
I do think culturally, I feel like the pendulum is going to swing at some point. Yeah. I feel like there is a groundswell of people who are they're slowly but surely getting very irritated with the anodyne culture that's being foisted upon them. Often at threat of losing their jobs and being ostracized from polite society. And I think it's going to be much like the 80s, 90s difference. I think there's going to be a swing. And my view would be by, 2030, I think the world is going to look very, very different to what it looks like now, especially culturally.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. So, by the way, I just wanted to tell you, I've made a list of new metal bands, okay? Like a proper fucking list. And I want to hear whether they are, in Jackie's terms, cool.
Jackson approved or not.
or boo, okay?
All right.
Because of just after I watched it, I thought I'm going to make a list of bands, and you're going to give me a yes or a no, or a
yay or a no. The thing for me is that with most new metal bands, even the ones that I profess to like, there's always like 6 or 7 exceptional songs, and then extraordinary amounts of garbage.
Sure.
And there's one band that has one perfect record. Well, I'm sure we'll touch on them, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I'll say that. So if I say yay, it's I'll probably contextualize like, okay, this yay, but this is what I really like about them.
All right, can I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Papa Roach. Absolute
horseshit. One of the worst bands. One of the worst bands on the face of the earth.
Wonderful. Okay. All right, Limp Bizkit.
I think they're one of, not a band I usually liked ever, but they have a couple of songs that I think are great. And I sent you a message about this separately. Rearranged, what a fucking tune.
Yeah, very good.
I loved on Significant Other. It's really only the first album, Significant Other, where they have songs I like. But on Significant Other, I thought, I'm not going to lie, at the time, especially Nookie, I thought was excellent. I like Rearranged very much. I love the End Together Now, that track he does with Method Man.
Yeah.
On the first record, Stuck is very cool, and Indigo Flow is really cool as well. Again, a lot of muck in between it, but they have their moments, and it's one of those bands where if I were at somebody's house, and the person isn't going to crank up Mayhem because they don't want to piss off their girlfriend or whatever the case may be. If they play Limp Bizkit, especially the first 2 albums, I'm not going to sit there going, God, I wish I could break my earphones out.
All right. I've got a long fucking list, dude.
All right, go for it.
Okay, Korn.
I like Issues. I don't really like anything else they did. I think the cover of Wicked that they did on Life is Peachy, I think is fucking excellent. There's like a real, but it's excellent because it has that really kind of anarchic, chaotic vibe I like in music, especially that kind of music. So that's very cool. But I think Issues is a superb record. The rest of their stuff I've never really liked.
Cool. POD.
Total muck. Absolute. And plus it's Christian muck, so it's even bigger muck. So...
For a moment there, when you said you like some new metal, I think some of your fans disappeared right up to the point you said it's Christian muck. They're gone.
Okay. Christian shit. Yeah.
Static X.
So one of the bands with they've got a lot of garbage in their discography, but their first record, I've said it on this podcast many times, I don't give a shit how false it makes me. I think that record is perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Wisconsin.
Yeah. I mean, I listen to it at least once a week. And now that I've got the new wheels, mate, it plays on loop because it's the most perfect driving music you can possibly find. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Okay, cool. All right, I like it. Okay, Disturbed.
A couple of songs off the first album I like. The rest nonsense. And I think David Raymond is a fucking loser.
Crazy Town.
Oh my god, it's fodder for the firing squad.
I'm pulling out names.
I was about to say, total fodder for the firing squad, mate.
Okay, Power Man 5000.
Also, weapons testing. that's what they'd be good for.
System of a Down.
I've made so many jokes about Surge on this show. It's like a running thing with me. There are a couple of cool songs on Toxicity. What I've been interested in by that band is how poorly their music has aged. Like I listened, I used to always think in my mind, like I really like the first and the second album, the rest I don't like so much. Then I listened to the first album and I could literally only get through half of the first song. I was like, this is the biggest load of fucking crap I've ever heard in my life. And the lyrics are so atrocious. I think there's one lyric on the first song on the first record. He goes, I want to fuck my way into the garden because everyone needs a motherfucker. And I was like, this is your liberal poet. It's like I practically grabbed the CD out of the car and wanted to throw it out the window. It is absolute shit. And then yeah, like I said, there's a couple of okay songs on Toxicity, but for the most part, I don't like them. I like their drummer. He seems like a man who I can get on board with, but the rest of them they can fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of the first album, a huge fan of the second album. I like those double albums that they released. So I'm a fan. But they do age badly.
One of the only bands where I walked out 2 songs in when I saw them live, when they played BYOB and all the stupid little kids were they're dancing like they were at a Britney show. I was like, this is it. I'm done. I'm going home. It's like,
right, got another one for you. Saliva.
Vagina saliva is what they are. Right?
The problem is I've now because you've forgotten about them for 20 years. You go, why are you doing me? I'm going to dream about this tonight. Okay.
Yeah. What's that?
Deftones.
Oh yeah, Deftones are good. First album great. Around the Fur fucking excellent. White Pony has its moments. All their records really have their moments, and I thought the last Deftones album was fucking excellent. And they're an interesting band because they're one of those bands that had the ability to transcend the genre, and there are so many people that are, stone hard, grim, everything must be cult and necro and black and evil, and it's like Deftones, that I really like. So, yeah, I like Deftones, and I think they're a band that of the whole scene, will stand the test of time.
Agreed. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, and also not that commercial.
No.
With the exception of My Own Summer, that's about it. The rest is kind of behind the back door and kind of underground. I like the sound of it. Yeah. Slipknot.
Mark, don't like it. 1 or 2 okay songs off the first record. It's sad about Joe Jordison. I thought he was a good drummer. But lyrics like if you're 5'5", I'm 6'6". It's weird for me. I'm weird when it comes to lyrics. It's the way in which certain lyrics. I don't have to agree with what the person's singing, but it's the way in which a lyric is written that'll put me off the band. If it's written like it was written by a 13-year-old imbecile, You know, I just couldn't get on board with it. That song to me was so atrocious it put me off the whole band.
Got it. Okay. Godsmack.
Crap, absolute crap.
Kid Rock.
Total garbage. He's got one cool song, and that's "Fuck Off." Everything else is total shit.
All right. Okay. Cold Chamber.
I think people have been a little harder on them than they really by rights ought to be. I think Loco is a fucking cool tune. I think actually weirdly their third record is their best. Dark
Black
Days. Yeah, there's some
Yes,
awesome tunes on there.
Fiend.
And you know, again, as far as like just easy listening music that you want to put your foot to the floor when you're driving, as soon as Fiend comes on, I mean, I'm yelling along to every single word of that song.
And lyrically, awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think Dez is probably a little maybe that's based on the first record because the lyrics on the first album wasn't very good, but the way that he writes and he kind of phrases his lyrics and the rhythm that he puts into his voice and his lyrics, especially on the third record, I think is very underrated.
Agreed. Okay, cool. Drowning Pool.
Drowning crap. The only I like Bodies because it reminds me of the ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view, but other than that, not nonsense, complete nonsense.
Yeah, some people say probably good that he died.
Yeah.
Orgy.
First album has got some very cool tunes. I don't know if you ever heard some of the stuff that they did when the bubble had burst. But they try to kind of go very commercial, and it's so embarrassingly bad. It's not even funny. But I thought the first and the second record had some cool songs on. They've got a song on called Dissension on the first record, which is very, very cool. Very, very cool.
Okay. Head PE.
Not a fan. Not a fan
Cool.
at all.
Okay. Except for Bartender. That's a tune. That's a
Yeah. That's all right. But the rest is, it's nonsense.
All right. Mudvayne.
Never got into them. Always thought they were massively overrated, and they also look like fucking absolute weapons. But it's never a band I got into.
Cool. Okay, here's one. It's been a little while since you've heard this. Kitty.
Oh my god. So I'm not gonna name names, but we both know the person, and I know that it's a band that this individual would model themselves after in every way, shape, or form, and it makes me hate their music even more because it's so lame, and it's like almost it's almost self-consciously lame, but it's like I said, abysmal.
Cool. Okay. Seven Dust.
Seven bullshit. Unlistenable.
It gets worse, dude. Okay, Taproot.
Also shit. I actually mentioned this to Kate last week when I did my episode with her. She still remembered them as well. But yeah, no, not my vibe, mate.
Cool. Edema.
Wasn't that was Jonathan Davis's brother? Was it not?
Cousin.
All right. Well, I would disown any of my family who make that shit. So.
Okay, I'm enjoying this, by the way. Okay, Evanescence.
Oh my fuck! The worst of the worst. I would literally, you can play the third Limp Bizkit album on repeat for the rest of my life before I have to listen to Bring Me Back to Life. That's like the heavy song for people that want to pretend like they're edgy, but beyond that, the heaviest thing they'll listen to is Jewel. It's just oh god, atrocious. I mean, I'd rather listen to Silence than listen to that.
Okay, all right, okay. Should I play it? Yeah, Linkin Park.
Also, complete and utter nonsense.
Cool. Here's a fantastic one for you. Puddle of Mud.
Worse than Linkin Park.
Okay, Soulfly.
They've had their moments. I thought that Primitive was all right. The first record was all right. Weirdly, again, a band who are not aging very well, and they've obviously in albums since gone very far away from any of the new metal stuff that they were doing. But like in the Sepultura Soulfly split, I much prefer Sepultura. I think they've continued to do interesting stuff that's thinks outside the box, still heavy but different and cool and unique and interesting. Whereas Soulfly is just, I don't know, just does nothing for me.
Sepultura's last album I loved.
I thought it was fantastic, and the records before that, they've not really had all that many missteps with Derek, and I think Derek is a phenomenal frontman as well. And on stage he cuts such a great imposing figure. He's this huge Uruk-hai looking dude. His voice is great. He's in engagement with the audience is great. I'm a big fan of post-Max Sepultura.
Cool. El Nino.
Diabolical, absolutely diabolical.
Okay, I don't know if you even remember this. It's like Dead Sea.
Oh yeah. Dead Sea was that not Cher's son or something?
Something like
it was
that,
some famous person, but again, the nature's muck, mate. I'd rather listen to a homeless person play a flute than listen to that shit.
We got it. All right. Stained.
Oh, fucking terrible as well. You see, Aaron Lewis is now a self-styled conservative countryman. He does like these acoustic songs now about the government and the liberals.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, Stereo Mud.
I don't even know who that is. That sounds like something that would have been on like a Metal Blade cover, not Metal Blade, sorry, a Metal Hammer cover CD, and you get one song of theirs and nothing else.
Very much. Okay, Primer 55.
More crap. Also, aren't they also Christian? Either way.
No. Like that main track that they did, Loose, the lyrics are "Watch these fuckers run when I get loose."
Oh, right. Okay. No. That's actually, those are cool lyrics. I might have to check that out again.
That song, just go and listen to that song, Loose. That's a tune. Okay, Soil.
Not bad. Sure, I got a lot of time for Sean Glass, who was the bassist in Soil. He was the bassist in Broken Hope as well for a while. So no, not something I'm going to jump up and down for joy about, but not something that I would go, this is terrible. This is Deadsy.
All right, one or two more for you. Snot.
I fucking love that band. It's a band like they only have the one record. I don't really know if I would call them new metal. I know they fell in with that scene, but their music is to me a bit different. It's I don't really know what you call it. I just think it is excellent, absolutely excellent. There's a track of that first record called The Box, which is phenomenal, and then my balls. Genius. Phenomenal record, absolutely phenomenal, on a par with that first Static X album.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Cold.
Again, not hugely unlistenable. It does sound like music for video game nerds, mate, that whose girlfriends leave them and then they need something to console themselves. I don't
actually, I tell you what, it's quite the opposite. If you ever have a lady in the room, play that in the background. Trust me.
No, that's Eric B. and Rakim, mate. That's what I play. No, Omega is the tune of choice when the love commences. But no, I don't like effeminate nonsense in metal. I don't like it at all. It's part of why I don't really like music where there's like Evanescence or Theatre of Tragedy. They were even worse because they had like the Shakespearean nonsense and guys wearing like crushed velvet outfits on stage, and then they've got this woman singing and the guy doing aggressive vocals. I don't like it. I'm sorry, but the caveman in me craves aggression and hyper levels of testosterone, no matter what genre of music it is I'm listening to.
Okay, Incubus.
Science wasn't a bad record. After that, they should have taken that long-haired fucking geek that was singing for that band, and they should have made him walk the plank in the open seas.
Mushroom Head.
Had definitely had their moments. I thought there were. I mean, the first 4 tracks on the first album, masterpieces, all of them. Some great songs on the second record. Couple of decent tracks on some of the later albums. Live, such a cool band to see. One of the biggest surprises ever. On a par with American Head Charge as far as like just a band that you weren't expecting anything from, and I saw them live and I was like, fuck, these guys are good.
So then to that point, American Head Charge.
First album, fantastic. They somehow could never make anything else that was worth listening to. But
that's just because they didn't work with what's his face anymore. Like they just fucked it all up. What's his name? The guy from American Records.
Rick Rubin.
Because he did that.
Yeah, it could be. I think the impression I get is that Martin Koch, or whatever his name was
a cock.
He was just an asshole. He got everyone who was contributing anything positive to the band. You know, they all left because he was a fucking asshole. And it was just I don't know. It's sad. It's shit when a band manages to just nail it that one time, and then everything else they do is just complete utter nonsense.
That was actually the record I thought you meant was like from start to finish perfect, because
no. If I had to rate my favorite 3 new metal records, it would definitely be American Head Charge, Snarts, and Static X. But the first Static X album to me would be far above all those albums.
Then the last one, Ultra Spank.
Again, a band who somehow could get it together to write a song that was near perfect, and then yeah, and Click is really good as well.
Fantastic.
And then there's 5 songs that are total shit, and then somehow they just managed to get it together again.
Well, they got dropped by their label because it wasn't a commercial success. By the way, go and have a listen to something called White Noise Owl. The vocalist and guitarist from Ultra Spank has got this alternative band called White Noise Owl, and there's a track on there on there called Are You Breathing? Now it's quite like just alternative, whatever. But the moment the guy sings, you hear him immediately, like from 20 years ago. That's very cool.
Yeah.
It's a decent tune.
No, I'll definitely check it out. But like I said, as far as new metal is concerned, its greatest contribution to music, in my view, was Constant Death Trip. And again, that's not really an album that fit necessarily. I mean, I know they toured with new metal bands, but it was maybe had more in common with Ministry than it did a lot of new metal stuff.
Oh yeah, because that had come sort of walked into that sort of industrial, vibe. But again,
what I find amazing about that record is that it's an album that they somehow managed to write an entire record. It's essentially creating rhythms on guitar. There's no real riffs on the album. It's just like jun, 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 every single song is just a different rhythm on guitar and samples and Wayne going and just these really cool driving beats. But yeah, like I said, I love it. Every song flows into each other perfectly. It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah. So based on everything you've just said, it turns out that new metal was quite a shit genre.
Well, like I said, I mean, for me, I was always black metal and death metal, and a lot of other stuff just kind of skated along the periphery. The music that I've connected with most of my life has been black metal, and it always will be black metal, and then death metal, and then probably some of the more sort of aggro, not necessarily politically inclined hardcore or crossover. Like I love SOD as an example. That first SOD record is masterpiece. It's always my big dream that we could do a medley of Sergeant D Is Coming, Kill Yourself, and what's his name, Fuck the Middle East together on stage, you and I. that would have been the way to go.
And where would you put Lamb of God?
Well, they're definitely not new metal. I mean,
No, I mean,
Lamb of God's like modern, good modern American metal.
yeah, but it's not black metal. It's not death metal. It's not, yeah.
No,
So,
no,
but
no.
you rank them in terms of what Jackie thinks is perfect.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I love Lamb of God. I don't actually think they've got a bad record. I used to really like Randy, but you know, he's kind of has a self-important air about him on interviews that rubs me the wrong way. But there's no denying when he's on stage, he's an amazing frontman. He's an incredible lyricist. You know, he's kind of the antithesis of Serge, in the sense that he writes lyrics in a very obscure way. And what I love about it is he writes it in such a way you can kind of cast your own, or you can connect to it in your own way. You don't, you know, he's not prescribing to you how he wants you to connect to the lyrics. He's got very Phil Anselmo way of writing lyrics, actually, I think. But I think they're a fucking phenomenal band, absolutely phenomenal. And you have to tip your hat to the fact that they have gotten huge completely on their own terms. They have never ever done anything that you could remotely argue is, you know, they're flirting with the mainstream now. You know, like when I mean, I've never liked In Flames, but when In Flames kind of got a whiff of, oh, we can hit it big now, immediately, you know, the everything started getting toned down. The you know, the logo changed. You know, there was more clean singing. There was keyboards, all sorts of shit like that. Lamb of God never did that. They, you know, they had a record that was successful, and then they were like, well, we'll make another record, and it's probably going to be heavier. And I've got a ton of respect for people that do that. People that succeed on their own terms are the people that I admire most, and certainly the bands I like most.
Yeah, so like my favorite In Flames album is Reroute to Remain, and I didn't find that to be particularly commercial, but the dross that followed is shocking. Like it's like fucking shocking. By the way, have you heard their re-release of
Clayman?
Clayman?
No, I didn't. I never liked Clayman, so.
Okay. I thought it sounded pretty cool. In fact, I'm going to go listen to it again.
I'll tell you what surprised me, and it'll surprise many people who listen to the podcast, considering how many mean things I've said about Iron Maiden. The new Iron Maiden single isn't bad.
Okay.
Like surprisingly not bad at all. I put it on almost in anticipation of, I can't wait to spend 5 minutes ripping on this. And then I listened to it and I was like, fuck, this is actually not bad at all. I like the album cover as well. But different for them. It's like Eddie done up as a samurai. But yeah, I think it's very cool.
I haven't listened to it.
I'll send it to you. But yeah, I mean, stuff that I'm into at the moment is let's say, I mean, it's mostly stuff that if I'm into bands, I'll generally try and get them on the podcast. So there's a band on Season of Mist called Withered, which I think is phenomenal. They just put out a new record. They're like a heavier version of Mastodon, I think, in some ways, like with some black metal influences. I listen to Mayhem, you know, nonstop almost. Like whenever I'm tired on what to listen to, I listen to, my go-to is Mayhem, or another band out of the States called Ecclese. Ecclese is like if you could somehow like you know, connect a USB cable to your brain and then take your worst nightmares and turn it into music. That's what Ecclese would sound like. I'll send it to you. It's fucking mental. It's really good. I'm trying to think what else I'm very much into. A band called Werewolves. It says so the guys from Antichrist Imperium, Matt from Akrokaka, very, very aggressive death metal, but the way that they recorded it was, you know, they would basically just sort of write songs and see how quickly they could put together a record. I think the first album was done in like I think it was written in 24 hours, recorded in less than a week. And so it's got this really cool, spontaneous, almost kind of punky feel to it, but at the same time, this little sort of, there's kind of these black metal undercurrents, and it's just fucking badass. It's gnarly, badass, relentless stuff, and that's what I like. I sort of if I feel like my toes are tapping while I'm working and I'm listening to music, that's when I know I'm in a good spot. And then the other thing I listen to quite a lot is Depeche Mode, because my daughter really likes it. So, and I fucking love it also, and I've always loved Depeche Mode.
Yeah, they're a fantastic band. I listen to it a lot. I tell you what is probably my favorite Depeche Mode, apart from the really cool driving stuff. Like I love Behind the Wheel, but from the 101, Depeche Mode, the live one, but their live track of Somebody for me is like amazing.
Mine, and it's partly because of the fact that this was the first. I try to get Aaron from My Dying Bride to cover it. So if they do cover it in the future, people know the idea came from me. But the first Depeche Mode song I ever heard is a song called "Shake the Disease," and they've done many different versions of it since. There's a live version where it's Martin Gore doing it on the piano, which is also excellent. But the original version is amazing. And then stripped, of course, it's astounding. And obviously Rammstein did a great.
I was about to say
that also.
Rammstein cover of Stripped is
yeah.
Fucking
but yeah, fantastic. But dude, what are your guys' plans as far as the rest of the year is concerned? I was talking to Paige today about whether we should roll the dice and buy tickets for South Africa for the end of the year. I'm probably going to do it tomorrow. And if push comes to shove and we have to quarantine for 10 days when we get back, then we'll just quarantine. It's $2,500, but at the same time, I haven't seen my parents for ages. This incident with our mutual friend whose father passed away has kind of, really sort of given me a kick up the arse and made me think to myself, look, rather spend the money now and get to spend, a Christmas with your family one last time, because, my dad's not very well. So, God knows what's going to happen there. I want to see you guys. I need to fucking get out somewhere and do something a bit different to, these 14-hour work days and then everything else that I try and squeeze into my life.
Yeah, so I think you should. Well, we're not going to leave South Africa at the end of the year, so definitely you should come, and you can come and stay in our posse in Cape Town. So you've got your own place here. You can take one of my cars, so you can drive around. So yeah, fuck, you should do it. Yeah,
no, that's. I think we definitely will. I reckon I'll probably buy the tickets tomorrow. It'll be nice to see you again as well.
Just buy tickets that can be refundable if there is a like a event like another spike and whatever.
Yeah. I noticed though the airlines aren't doing all that much of that anymore. The whole instant refund that's out the window now. That you like I said, it's a bit of a roll of the dice. But the tickets aren't too expensive. It's not like we're gonna fly first class. So, but then obviously there's the other thing that I need to talk to you about separately about getting that ring organized. There's only so much more hi-fi shit that I can buy. and not turn up with one of those before I get the boot.
Yeah, indeed.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll arrange it so we can go to the same jeweler that did teasering.
All right.
They're pretty good. Cape Diamonds, they're called.
Yeah, badass, mate. Awesome catching up with you again. And we will speak again very soon. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to do something a bit different on the podcast. Hopefully, people will enjoy this. I fucking loved recording it. So. And I had a blast going through the list of new metal at the end.
I thought the reason why I thought I'd bring that up is because I thought if we're going to talk about the subject matter, it's going to be quite serious subject matter, and you do want to add a little bit of lightness to it. And I knew you'd have your cracks at that.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, my man. I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much to my mainmost mate, Lo Reichert, for joining the show. I had an absolute blast recording that, and I hope you guys were thoroughly entertained. Well worth checking out that HBO documentary if you haven't done so yet. I mean, you are most likely going to have your blood boiled if you have an IQ of over 64. But it's good to see it all the same. I would definitely suggest also check out some of the stuff that's littered across YouTube about the event. I mean, again, what an absolute clusterfuck. But one, like I said, that's really sort of one of these cultural flashpoints that I have always been generally very interested in, and it was fun to talk through. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Be back again next week. I'll back again next Tuesday for the next in the ongoing saga of Into the Necrosphere, episode 93. Guest to be announced, but I'm pretty confident you guys are going to like who you see. I am going to play out now with a band who I don't think capture the current zeitgeist more vividly than these dudes. Werewolves, off of their awesome second record, What a Time to Be Alive. This is a song called Traitors and Bastards. Have a fucking great weekend, everybody, and I will see you all next Tuesday.
Work for that. Ah, fuck off! Sit down! In the corner! Don't move, cunt!
Now hang on to your feelings, alright? Because it's gonna get fucking hairy.